These protests in China are momentous. Wherever they lead, they are hugely significant. There haven't been protests like this on the mainland since Tiananmen Square in 1989. But why exactly are people protesting? The spark was an apartment fire in the far western city of Urumqi that killed 10 people, and rescue efforts were reportedly hampered by lockdown restrictions. But the fuse has been laid over months of frustration at China's zero COVID policy. It began burning at a factory that makes iPhones in Zhengzhou that saw fierce anti-COVID protests last week. Instead of relying on vaccines, the Chinese have tried to eradicate the virus with draconian lockdowns. Some people have been welded into their homes, reportedly. Others have starved because they've been unable to get out. China has a formidable state security apparatus. It's already swung into action, sweeping up protesters as well as detaining 2 foreign journalists. It'll be using facial recognition cameras to track down others, deploying all the powers of a security surveillance state. People are finding different ways of protesting, some carrying pieces of blank white paper, symbols of protest against online censorship. Others have told journalists they are protesting just by watching others do so. China has seen big protests in Hong Kong before, and protests on mainland China are commonplace, but they are small and localised and easily contained. We haven't seen protests on this scale, with people out in their thousands, and this widespread, happening in at least 10 cities, since the pro-democracy protests of the 80s. Those protests were crushed by tanks and troops massacring hundreds of people. This is the first time since then we've heard the Chinese openly calling for their government to stand down. China's leader Xi Jinping, recently entrenched for an unprecedented 3rd term in power, has already launched a crackdown on these protests. But he has a huge problem. With civil resistance against more lockdowns and more protests, COVID is likely to spike, and his anti-COVID policies have failed. China's Sinovac is less effective than Western vaccines, which he could choose to use, but with that comes a loss of face. The pandemic could escalate, leading to more unrest and repression, and the impact on the country's economy could be enormous, which could bring even more people out on the street. This could all lead to a spiralling crisis for the Chinese government as it tries to bring things under control.